In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Most Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, and may His peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wherever you are, whatever time it may be for you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon you and your loved ones, Ya Rabbil Alameen. And thank you once again for joining us. Let's talk about it on Thursdays. Always a pleasure and honor to be in the company of my two sisters, Emily Oqlah and Suha Dweik. Emily and Suha, it's good to see you. It's been a while. I think last
Yeah.
time we met, it was before the elections. And I guess now that the elections are over, we are back into our program. And we are picking up where we left off last time. We're talking about healthy relationships. And just as a reminder, reminding you and our viewers, if you remember, we spoke about a research that was done about a good predictor of good health and happiness. And what the research found out, it was not really money or good position. That was a good predictor to indicate whether people are going to live healthy and happy. It was always about meaningful relationships. And they said that people who have experienced meaningful relationship actually live happier, and they're also healthier. And I guess it's very timely, and I think it's really good that this is the topic that we are still talking about. So welcome back again to Healthy Relationships, part number 3. Suha and Emily, it's good to be with you, and welcome back again.
Thank you. Salam alaikum. Thank you for having us. I'm excited to be here again.
Yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We're excited to continue the talk on healthy relationships and hopefully have some positive things to share too about healthy relationships.
Beautiful. And I believe last time I was not here, by the way, so you all did that. But I believe that you were talking about, I think we started talking about the different challenges that people have in relationships. And please remember, whenever we speak about problems in the relationships or what makes a successful relationship, it is never the absence of problems. Every family is going to have to face some kind of problems and some challenges. A good family, a good, healthy relationship is a relationship that has problems, but that relationship makes sure that they have the proper tools to address their problems, and they actually have the courage to ask for help when they need to, and the humility to also address and acknowledge that we do have a we do have a problem. So I know we spoke about the different challenges that people go through, and part of speaking about the challenges, but also then we speak about what makes a good, healthy relationship. And I believe you too left us hanging as you were about to discuss the 5 languages of love. So if you don't mind, just remind our viewers what it is that we're talking about when we speak about the language of love. What does that mean?
Yeah. So there's a research that's been done, and there's a book by Dr. Gary Chapman that talks about the languages of love. He says that there's 5 languages of love, and that each person kind of speaks 1 or 2 languages fluently, more fluently than other languages. And part of being in a good relationship is being aware of what your love language is and what your partner's love language is, so that you can communicate together in that way. So as you guys see on the screen, there's the words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. And I can go over the first one. And so words of affirmation, usually if you're fluent in that language, you basically love to hear feedback, love to hear sweet words, whether it's a text message or a letter or just that constant verbal affirmation of your partner's love. And I don't know, Emma, if you'd like to go over acts of service.
Yeah, I'll go over acts of service. When I think of acts of service, I have one friend in mind. It's not a within the context of a love language, but even within a friendship, I have one friend who's always wanting to help out. As soon as I say, oh yeah, I'm tired today. Oh well, I'll bring you coffee. I'll do this with you. And so when I think of acts of service, I think of that type of person, the person who is there in that moment when you need something, and sometimes it may not always be what you need in it, but it kind of helps them feel nice to give you something or help out in that moment. So it's someone who's wanting to help you out in your daily chores or your daily workload. And it could be helping with laundry in the house, helping with dishes, helping with the kids, stuff like that. And it can go both ways. And I think that can be a positive thing. It can also be something that gets irritating. So maybe we can talk some more about how when love languages don't align, what happens in that situation. I think next is receiving gifts. Suha, you can cover that one.
Sure. I mean, that one pretty much speaks for itself. So basically, being really thoughtful and, or you appreciate thoughtful gifts, somebody who, even if it's something small, it doesn't have to be like a huge gesture or a gift that's really expensive, but just something that shows that, to show your spouse that they're the priority, if that's how you express it. And then when you're receiving that as a language, you appreciate little small thoughtful gifts. So maybe they'll pick up your favorite dessert on the way home, or a small flower or something like that, where it's just it shows that you're on their mind. One thing I wanted to mention that I thought was really interesting about the languages of love, is that some of the research shows that the most commonly, the most common love language is words of affirmation, which is about 23%, but really they kind of all divide up about equally among people. So it's about 19 to 18 or 18 to 20% per language. But I just thought it was interesting that words of affirmation was the most common love language.
I'm listening to this and I'm saying, I'm trying to figure out what my love language is right now as you two are talking. And I did come across this book before, and to be honest with you, I was very dismissive of it, and I think I still am not a believer yet, um, because I'm just looking into this and I'm saying, I wonder if I'm just looking at this and I'm saying, all right, does one have to speak only one language or understand one language only? To me, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, is it not situational? Meaning that at times I know that the words are more meaningful, and at times maybe acts of service are more meaningful than, let's say, receiving gifts or physical touch or quality time. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on that. Does one speak only one language, or would you not say that this is situational?
Well, absolutely. You don't, like, most people don't speak just one language. They're most fluent in perhaps one, which is the one that's most impactful and most meaningful to them. But most people, speak maybe one to two that are more fluent, and then the others maybe not as much. But it's not like I'm only words of affirmation and that's the only language that I can communicate to my partner or my husband or my wife with, and vice versa. I think maybe it's just that's the one that has the most impact or most meaning to me when I receive it from my partner, or or that's how I generally express my love towards him. So I think that's kind of how I've understood it.
Interesting. I think you inserted that word fluent in, and I think that might explain, the idea of, yeah, you may speak all of them, but you are more fluent in some more than others. I'm sorry, Emily, you were going to say something.
I was just going to confess that I haven't actually read this book myself, Shaykh Fazaga. So when you're asking these questions, I wonder too, how fluent are people in these languages, to use Suha's word.
Yeah.
But
And
I think
go ahead.
I imagine that kind of like what Suha was saying, maybe I think that we as humans probably need all of these at some point. We would need all elements of these to be attended to within our relationships in order for it to maybe be a more holistically fulfilling relationship. Because I imagine if there was only physical touch, but none of the words of affirmation or the gifts that might attend to some of the emotional connection, or some of the other softer moments that can happen throughout the day, that might not feel like an equally balanced relationship.
Yeah, I think, part of the way that I took away from this book is that there can be situations where one spouse in the relationship speaks really fluently, for example, words of affirmation, and receiving gifts, and the other partner, maybe those are the ones that are the least fluent for them. They're not really as important for them, and so I think the conflict happens or can happen if that one person is expressing themselves in acts of service and their partner doesn't see it, because to them it's like, well, you're not telling me, you're not using words to express it, I'm not getting that confirmation or reaffirmation of our love. Well, the other spouse is like, but I am, but I'm doing this, and I'm running these errands, and I'm spending quality time, and that's my way of expressing it. So I think it's really nice to, take sometimes to just be aware of maybe what your language is and what your partner's language is. And if there is, a discrepancy in what languages you're fluent in, to be mindful and, put more effort into trying to express your love in your partner's language, and to be more receptive when they're expressing their love. So that's kind of how I understood it, and how what I from the book.
And again, I am not taking away any of the importance of this, and I think it's really fascinating, especially being aware of your own language and your spouse's language. I think that is like really, really crucial. And for example, just looking into words of affirmation, for example, I remember we were discussing this earlier in one of our classes, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and say to my servants to only say that which is best. And the Quran does not command believers to say that which is good. There is this idea of say that which is best, where a believer is supposed to be deliberate, thoughtful, considerate, about the words that they use, because words can have a big, huge impact on us. And I just love this idea of people who are just very selective with their words, very considerate with their words. I think that's such a beautiful gift. I mean, I would love to speak this language, to be perfectly honest with you. And I would say that I'm very envious of the people who have this ability. Not just that ability, it just comes to them so effortlessly, like they're just naturally able to just be nice, speak nice. And I think it's just such a joy to be in the company of those who are actually like that. I'm sorry, I think I stopped you when we're still discussing the last two: quality time and physical touch.
Yeah, I can cover quality time. So quality time is when you're having uninterrupted one-on-one time, and this is when you want to create special moments together. You could think of it even as a date night, and that's when maybe you don't have your phones out and you're engaged in joint time together where you're present completely with the other person. Um, I tell couples all the time to have quality time. So I'm a big advocate for having quality time within relationships, whether it's your language or not. But I think it's important to note too that if that is your language, to make sure you're really having it, and to let your partner know that you need that quality time. You want those one-on-one moments where it's just you and your partner connecting, without kids around, without family around, without your phones on, without TV on, just you and your person connecting and having that time together.
Okay. And what are people supposed to do? during that quality time, by the way?
I think one of the biggest things,
Well,
oh, go ahead, Emily.
no, go ahead, Suha.
I was going to say, I think one of the biggest things, especially in the world that we're living in now and the time, is that this unfocused attention, right? It's that I think that is the most precious thing of all that we can give is just undivided attention, where we put down our phones, we put down any distractions around us, and really be present with our partner. That I think that's one of the best ways that you can spend time with your partner. It's just to be there and present.
You know, in the hadith, it said that the Prophet ﷺ, despite the fact that he had to do so many things and like deliver his message to mankind and humanity and visit all these tribes and different cities, that there isn't really any complaint about him not being available to his family. And I find that to be really, really fascinating that I do not remember hearing a single complaint that somebody said that you're not there. And I think we spoke about this whole notion of availability, approachability, and accessibility. And that is how you actualize this notion of quality time. And like you said, Emily, I also find myself telling couples in our therapy sessions that time away just for them as a couple, time away from all the different distractions that are going on is really, really crucial and very essential to rejuvenate and to just make sure that the relationship is actually healthy and it's well maintained. All right, moving on. Physical touch, Suha.
Yeah, but to your point, Sheikh Fazaga, with quality time, it's really not about how long. It's about the quality of that time. So
Mm.
sometimes we can be sitting with our partner for several hours, but we're not really there. But dedicating maybe 30 minutes or an hour of an actual, time with each other makes a much bigger difference. And I think that's what the Prophet ﷺ is doing. He was very busy, but he was able to really make that time be worthwhile.
You
Um,
know, interestingly, you say this because one of the longest hadith that's narrated about the Prophet ﷺ has nothing to do with theology. It has nothing to do with jurisprudence. It was actually, there are two different narrations. It says that it was him and his wife, Aisha, radiallahu anha. And the story says that in one narration, it said that he was telling her. In another narration, she was telling him, and they were sitting there discussing a story where 11 women in the pre-Islamic days sat together and they decided to play like, tell it all type of a game. All these women were just going to sit there and they were just going to talk about their husbands freely and openly, and whatever it is, they were just going to talk about it. And these like are 11 women sitting there and each one is just talking about her husband. And so like a lovely, lovely chat that is taking place, and each woman is talking about her husband. Some said good stuff about their husbands, and some didn't have anything nice to say about their husbands. And here is the Prophet ﷺ listening to this, and here we are reading this as a hadith, and it's this super long story, and each woman is saying this, and the Prophet ﷺ is listening and he's actually commenting. And like you said, this notion of quality time does not necessarily mean that we are about to come and sit and, discuss something really, really serious. It's just not about catching up. It's about chit chatting. It's about, we don't want to talk about the kids. We love them. But you know what? Enough of that. We don't want to talk about the difficulty of online classes. We see this every day. We just want to catch up. What's going on with you? What's going on with you? And I love that. And thank you for pointing that out. Yes.
yeah, I mean, I think one of the ways that I can tell, like when a friendship is actually a good friendship or not, is if we're able to sit in silence and it's totally comfortable. And I think that goes back to that where it's you just feel that they're present, but it's not. There's no formality. It feels like there's a quality there. That's hard to describe, but you can feel it. And I think that's what it is with quality time.
Nice.
So the last one is physical touch, and that's really just talking about non-verbal use of body language. And so it could be something as subtle as a hug or, holding the hands or a kiss, it's just really showing that that physical affection often. And I think one of the biggest parts about it is that a person who's really fluent in this language is just, they show that intimacy is a priority in their relationship, and they make time for it, and they make that known. So and it can be very simple things. It can be just a very simple touch or a holding of a hand, but it's like wanting that connection, and it's usually through touch.
I don't know if I told you this story before, but there was a like a some kind of like a father's appreciation day at my kids' school, and these kids, I think they were in the fourth grade, and the kids were supposed to come, by the microphone and then say, "I love my dad because," and they're supposed to like say one sentence. And here I am. And I think on that day, I don't know why I decided to wear my therapist hat as I was listening to this, just sitting there and just psychoanalyzing what is happening. And like every kid would come in and say, "I love my dad because," "I love my dad because." And I think I counted, there were about 26 kids. And I remember that day, over 20 of these boys and girls, I think unanimously, they all said, "I love my dad because." And everything that they said had something to do with physical touch. He carries me on his back, he puts me on his shoulder, or he tickles me. And these were the three most common statements made by these kids. My dad tickles me. And I don't know what it is about dad and tickling. I think it's just that, I think it's the immediate gratification of making your kids happy. I see my kids, for no reason, I just find myself tickling them crazy, and everybody's happy, and you know what, but there is something about physical touch, and I think it's the release of the oxytocin, the feel good hormone, and that actually is easily released when we are the recipient of a nice physical touch that indicates some kind of goodness, initiation of intimacy, telling somebody that you did good or good job, to congratulate, to comfort, to console, to meet, to greet, to say goodbye, and absolutely, absolutely lovely. Did you
Yeah,
all
I
talk
think
about?
that yeah, I mean, just one more point on physical touch in a non romantic relationship. I think one of the first ways as humans, if you want to console somebody or you want to show them closeness or comfort, is you can put your hand on their shoulder, or there's something just to show that connection. I think it's a very human thing to need that and to want that, and definitely like a very I guess human way of showing that connection. Because yeah, there's a
And I
research. You guys were like, I don't know if you can say more about it, Emily. I think it was with little monkeys, and they had like a cloth mom. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but there's a cloth mom, and some of the monkeys that had no mom at all. They were just a lot of them ended up dying because they didn't have that touch factor. But yeah, you guys can kind of elaborate more on the research, because I don't know if I have all the details on it. Right.
Actually, the research is old, and I think it also came in as there was a case of an orphanage in Romania where a lot of the orphans were dying despite the fact that they were well clothed, they were well fed, and they were well taken care of, but they were still dying. And there was a research as to what was causing that, and they found out that they were not held. And in one of these documentaries that I watched, was these kids would just sit there and they would just rock back and forth. They would just be sitting, rocking to the side, and it was all about because of the absence of that physical that physical touch. And I can see that, subhanallah, sometimes I can see people going through what we call emotional starvation. They're waiting for somebody to speak to them in any of these languages. But the point is, in whatever way it is, I am just emotionally starving. And starvation is not only physical, some people really do experience emotional starvation. And the way to fulfill that would be to speak a language that would most nourish that individual. The sad part is that when we feel emotionally starved and we don't find that love at home, I think that sometimes we start looking for it outside, and sometimes we might find it all um in the wrong places. May Allah protect us all. All right.
Inshallah.
So moving on. This is about communication, and we're talking about how do you communicate that love language. So, for all those who have never heard of what love language is, now that we know what the love language is, and here is how you become fluent in that love language. So, inshallah, tonight we might end up having some experts in these love language. So, words of affirmation. How do you communicate that love language?
This is, similarly to what we were saying earlier, it's verbally, you're encouraging someone, you're affirming, you're appreciating, empathizing, and listening actively. And I think that is probably what's key in terms of communicating words of affirmation, because oftentimes when we're hearing someone talk, we may not actually really be listening to them. We're preparing what we want to say as we're listening to the other person. But if we could pause on what we would like to say and be present in the moment and listen to what they're saying and reflect back to them what we're hearing, that's a great way to try to communicate words of affirmation of, wow, I heard you had a really tough day. I'm sorry you had a tough day. Rather than, oh, I had a tough day too. It's a different way of communicating those words of affirmation. And then the different actions you can do besides just verbalizing are you can send a nice text message or a card, or even like check in at the end of the day, I think, to say to see how someone is doing and to listen actively with what they're telling you.
Interesting. I'm not really big on texting, to be honest with you. And I can truly make a confession that that was never a language that I spoke. And I remember one time my wife, she just had this big complaint about, like, you never send me any text message, so I see you every day. and and she was just telling me, she was like really upset, like, you don't send anything. And I'm saying, I honestly, it never crossed my mind that I want to send these messages. But that's good to know. Can a
That's
person learn a language that they've never spoken before in this context right here? Is that possible?
And I think, yes, that's part of why it's good to be aware of it, because, you might not be fluent in, let's say, words of affirmation, but if you know that that's a language that your spouse really appreciates and really needs, then you can make an effort to try to, show your affection or your love in that way. And also to, if you're feeling like, my gosh, my spouse is not really showing me that they care, or like, I need that confirmation, then you can be more aware and look for these signs and say, oh, well, she did send a nice long text message, or she did check in, or she has said this and this. And so I think that's one way, just to learn, just like you learn any language, I guess. It's by being aware of it and looking for those signs, and trying to incorporate that in your life more often. I apologize about the noise. I have some construction going on, so I'm sorry for that.
Actually, we
I
didn't
think
hear it, but now that you pointed it out, now I can just pick on it now. So thank you very much for doing that. I think
I think oh, we keep speaking at the same time tonight.
I am sorry. I think to me, it's just the word unexpected is what's going to do it. Especially if somebody, that's not how they usually talk, and all of the sudden that's the language that they're using. I think that would have a nice impact. Sorry, Emily, go ahead.
I was thinking in terms of if words of affirmation is not where you would naturally come from in terms of communicating your love or connection with someone, But you know, like Suha was saying, if you know that that's what your spouse really appreciates or really needs or wants, a way to do it might be just scheduling it in your day, because it won't naturally occur to you to do it. Just like we schedule brushing our teeth or we schedule washing our face, maybe scheduling it within your day to remind yourself to send a nice text message saying, "How are you? I'm thinking of you," or send a card or check in at some point, is a way to kind of build that within your relationship and within your daily practice.
Nice. I love it. And again, before we leave this one, I just have to say the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught it so beautifully when he said, Al-kalimatu tayyibatu sadaqa, that a good word is an act of charity. And this is an act of charity that we all are capable of delivering. And you can have as many of it as possible. And just imagine, just be nice, speak gently, speak nicely, and that is considered an act of charity. How does one communicate physical touch type of love language, Suha?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of covered that, where it's just nonverbal use of it's using your body to communicate it. So whether it's holding their hand or coming, giving them a hug, or just approaching them and like touching their shoulder or something, it could be very minimal, right? But it's using your body to communicate it. So maybe sitting really close to them, or like trying to, if you're out in public, making an effort to hold their hand. That's just one of the ways, some of the ways that you can do it. And I think a big part of it too is knowing that making intimacy just a thoughtful priority. I like how that's worded, where it's something that it's not like it doesn't seem like I guess a chore. It's more of like this is just time that I want to make for us, and it becomes it's a more thoughtful way of approaching it.
Nice. All righty.
I was going to add one thing about physical touch just before I move on, because some people don't feel comfortable touching maybe in front of others or in public. But I think a way that you could even build in physical touch, small moments throughout the day, could be a hug before you leave for work, or a hug when you get home from work. And we've covered that research before, that it's like a 6 or 7 second hug. That's the length of time to create connection between your partner, or to release the happy hormone in your brain. And so even a short 6-second hug at the beginning of a day or end of a day is a great way to build physical touch in your relationship. I'll leave it at that.
Nice. Okay. Moving on to the third love language, receiving gifts.
So communicating, receiving gifts.
Okay.
Yeah. I think of thoughtfulness, like such a good word about receiving gifts. When your partner is thoughtful about what you might like or what you might enjoy, and sharing that thoughtfulness with you, of giving gifts or showing gestures. When you're receiving a gift, I think the message is, I thought about you in advance enough to think about what you might like, to take the time to get it, and to take the time to give it to you. So I think there's more wrapped up to it than just the physical gift itself, for me. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
It's that
again, time. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's just that you took the time to think of your spouse, right? It's, you came across something, it could be something small, but that reminded you of your spouse, and you took that time to take that and bring it to them. Or when you are getting a gift for, a bigger occasion, that gift is not just like, all right, well, what's the something that she might like. It's more of something where you have thought about what he or she really appreciates, taking into consideration their personality, their likes, and really put together something that shows that you have put thought into it.
Nice. And again, just going back to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his teaching, speaking about this notion of tahadu, tahabu, mutual gift, exchange of gifts ultimately leads to people, liking each other more. And it's not really the gift itself, but it is, like Emily said, it's the thought behind the gift. And when people get into this habit of mutual exchange of gifts, I think it speaks volumes without really speaking much, if you want to say it that way. um Time is going by real quick here. We've got two more to cover. Quality time, how do you communicate that, and what are the actions to be taken?
Yeah, so we kind of talked a little bit about that earlier, which is just making that purposeful time to spend with your spouse, and it's time where your attention is with them completely. You're putting away distractions, and you're focused on what your partner has to say, or how your partner is feeling, or just being with them. So it can, definitely be like going out on a date, but it could also be something as small as just going out for a small walk, or sitting together and having a conversation. Just maybe, setting together some time in the day where you are without the kids, and you're just um, talking, like having that one-on-one time, just being really present with them. I know also it's really helpful and really healthy to, if you're able to, set up something a little bit more elaborate, like a weekend getaway, which could be a really like it could really alter and change the relationship, because you're able to spend that uninterrupted time with each other when it's dedicated to each other.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, how is COVID and lockdown impacting that? Is it providing more opportunity for people, or is it allowing for, I guess, more interaction, leading to more friction, possibly potentially creating more tension? I just wonder what your thoughts are regarding this. Is that a good time for quality time, or is that a bad time for quality time?
Goes both ways, I think.
I think both too. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
think, oh, go ahead, Suha.
that's okay.
I was going to say, I think quality time, well, maybe not quality time, but time together has increased in during COVID, because we're maybe spending more time at home. We're not able to leave the house to go to work, or leave the house to socialize or do the things that we typically do. That doesn't necessarily mean that quality time has increased, because while we may be spending time together at home, it may be that we're all on our phones, we're all on our computers, we're all watching TV. So I think even in light of COVID, it's important to carve out quality time, meaning a date night, even if that's a walk around the block or a walk around the park, or once the kids go to sleep, sitting together and talking, or spending time with the kids. That family time can be quality time too, I think, even without phones and without computers. So I'll pass it back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to add was that it does go both ways, because as domestic violence has really increased during the time of COVID, unfortunately, where a lot of times people are stuck together in the house, and that causes for more friction, more problems. There's not that break or getaway, and so that has increased. But then on the other hand, you know I've seen that a lot of people have been taking advantage of the just going outside and being out together in family, actually using their backyards, going to the park. And so there has been that increase in the time. But I think it goes back to being intentional, and that's really the core of quality time, is intentionality behind it. It's not just being there; it's being there with the focus of spending time with your partner, and dedicating that time with each other.
Nice. And I'm just thinking back into a research that I read about quality time with kids, like you were saying earlier, Emily. And you're talking about, like, meals. Meals like a really good time to seize as quality time. I know that during COVID, nobody is dropping off or picking up kids from school, even though I think as parents, we are all praying for that day to come very, very soon, Ya Rabbal Alameen. I think we all want to drop off our kids to school, not not because we're tired, because I think they just really want to go to school right now, but we also want that break as well. But they're talking about, the time that it takes to drop off the kids and pick up the kids from school. It's like that was a time that research shows that if you seize that opportunity, it can be such a great time to connect um with the kids, and especially meal times, especially if they become long, and and everybody, the distractions are all out of the way, no phones, no TV, no papers, no books, comic books. I think that just can really add to that quality time that you all spoke about. All righty, last one, acts of service.
Um, yeah, so that one, it's really it's where you're doing little favors or things around the house or things without your partner asking, that just show, like it could be cleaning out your partner's car, or maybe doing the dishes, or doing something without being asked, showing that this is my way of like showing that I care. So I guess in terms of some of the actions that you can do is, like I said, doing some chores together, or um, making the other person like breakfast in bed. It could be just sometimes a lot of times, going to work and feeling like you're, especially I feel like a lot of men use this language, is that they feel like, okay, so I'm going to work and I'm providing, and I'm working hard to provide for this family, and this is my way of showing that I care towards my spouse and my family. So it could be something like that. And as a person who's receiving it, just being mindful of that and appreciating that this is they're working hard to express their love in that way.
Yeah, it
I
makes
think,
me
like,
think.
for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I just feel so empowered tonight. I am going to go home and, like, have a really, really, like, a big list of complaints right now for all the love language stuff that I've been doing and that I have not been getting any credit for. Um, I feel empowered right now. And like you said, I think for a good number of men, I think the acts of service come much easier for us. It's like, what, okay, so this is the car that my wife drives. I'll make sure that there is enough gas in it. I'll
Yeah.
make sure that what there is, it's well maintained. I'll do the oil change. I will do this and I will do that, and you do these things in the hopes that you get credit for it. But I don't think I've been getting enough credit for that. And like I said, I think a good number of people out there will be complaining tonight that, what, I've been speaking that love language for the longest time, but it was your fault that you didn't understand.
And that's where it comes, where it's important to know, right? Because now you can be, your partner can be like, or the spouse can be like, oh yeah, I can see that they're doing that for me and for the family. And so more appreciation.
I
I,
hope our the viewers are able to spend some time thinking, what is my fluency level with these love languages, and let me think about my spouse and what's their love language that they show me that I don't always pick up on. Because I think gratitude really goes a long way with all of these, of recognizing where you are and where your partner is, and recognizing one another in your attempts at connecting through these methods.
mm. I really appreciate this. I mean, number one, it proved that I am actually fluent in all of these languages right now. But I think the next question that I have for you is, if we can spend the rest of the time on it, it'll be great. And that is, how do you make sure that you are heard when you speak that language? I mean, it's one thing for you to speak it, but if I give a very eloquent speech in Greek and you don't speak Greek, then my speech, it won't be understood. So the question is, how do you go making sure that you've been heard? And I'm not talking about just what I'll be doing tonight, going there and just complaining. I'm talking, like, really, how do you make sure that you are heard?
I think asking is a really great way to also be heard, of asking your partner, they want love to be shown for them? How do they want love and care to be shown? And you can also say, this is how I want love and care to be shown towards me and how I like to share it towards you. Because, like you said, Sheikh Bazaga, some of these things might be taken for granted, like putting gas in someone's car. It may become so part of everyday life that it becomes expected, or washing the dishes after dinner. Um, but I think verbalizing that, hey, this is a way that I show my love towards you, towards our family. It's important for me. Having that awareness allows people to begin to say thank you and begin to show gratitude.
Yeah, definitely. I think just having that conversation, and it's a great place to start. You know, feeling like it's safe to voice, you know, how what it is that or how it is that you express love, and how it is that you what's your the way that you perceive it, and just having that conversation, I think, is it's one of the best ways to start, um, for sure.
I can almost see that conversation not going very well because it's you'd be like, well, if I have to tell you, then that is just messed up. So you're supposed to figure this out yourself, and you shouldn't be asking this question. You're supposed to figure. You're supposed to. You're supposed to know,
You
and
know,
it won't
being
be me
curious.
saying that, by the way, just to let you know.
I think just being curious, approaching it from a place of curiosity, because the way that you have that conversation is really important. And it goes back to what we talked about last time, where, you know, um, how you communicate makes a huge difference, using I statements, and, you know, not doing in a way where the other person feels attacked, or the other person feels like um, they're they're being criticized, right? Just being showing curiosity, um, that automatically will let the other person's defenses come down, and they're more willing to share. And I think there's a lot of appreciation for feeling like the other person wants to know, because that shows that they're wanting to make a change and that they care. So definitely being curious is a big way to approach that conversation.
All right, beautiful. Well, sisters, we are almost out of time. If a person is not fluent in any of these languages, what are like some small steps that they can take? Let's just say that, you know what, I'm not a hugger, let's say. And you know what, that physical touch is not something that I grew up with. And I but I do want to learn that language. Where do I start? Or I would like receiving or buying gifts. To me, it's like, look, man, I'm just waiting for our anniversary. That's the only time that I think of a gift. Other than that, it just never crosses my mind. So where does a person begin when they want to learn a new language?
I would say you can start small. Don't try to run a marathon if you're just taking a first step. Because a gift, sometimes I think when we think of gifts, we think of something very elaborate. But a gift could be, I got you a coffee on my way home because I know you like coffees. That's something small, right?
That
Or
is
a hug. Maybe a hug is too much, but maybe a touch on the shoulder is okay. So
okay.
you can build up to things or learn small ways to show these different languages that aren't too out of your comfort zone.
Okay. What I hear you say that is every language here is teachable, taughtable, learnable.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it goes both ways, right? So it's one, you know, having that conversation with your partner is really important, because then, you know, you're showing curiosity. You want to know what it is that, you know, what's their fluent language, and letting them know your language of fluency. And then you can be, you know, on the other side of it, just being more on the lookout for those little signs. So in the next time you fill gas for your spouse's car, she appreciates that more and says, you know what, that was his way of showing care. And I think that really does go a long way, because when you're aware of it, you're seeing those signs, then you're more willing to kind of let down your wall, and be willing to be a little bit more vulnerable and express yourself as well. So it does go both ways.
Nice. And I think one thing to pay attention to is making sure that we are not expecting immediate gratification, because I did one thing, I should not be wanting to be celebrated too soon. And sometimes taking joy in doing these things can actually be more helpful than waiting to be recognized for the good that you have, done. This was a beautiful, nice session. So Jazakumullah khair, both Suha and Emily. It was good being with you. And to all of our viewers, I believe we will be continuing this topic because we're not done yet with healthy relationships. May Allah grant us all a healthy relationship. Please be safe. As you know that COVID is making a comeback. There is a second wave coming up. The numbers are climbing. Please practice your social distancing. Please do the sanitization. And please, if you really do not need to be out, please do not go out. May Allah keep us all and our loved ones safe, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And until we see you next time, we say so long and Assalamu alaikum, Suhan, Emily. Assalamu alaikum to both. You'll have a good night.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam,
Allah.
everybody.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.